Continuing on in our expert category, next coming to the stage is Brian Derby. Brian works as a managing consultant at BTD Consulting, Inc. Before passing the California bar, he spent 17 years in corporate America working in IT, information technology. Brian has a bachelor's in MIS from Penn State, a Juris Doctor from Western State Law, and a certificate in international business negotiations from Hamline Mitchell. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our next expert, Brian Derby.
17 years. Is this on? 17 years in corporate America. I don't look that old, do I? All right. The year is 2017. It is May. The year is 2017. Thank you. It is May. No one knows it yet, but one of the biggest cybersecurity breaches, a computer hack, in the history of the United States has just begun. Before the dust settles, this company being hacked would agree to nearly $500 million in settlement fees. The company's CEO would resign over this single incident. And it's possibly because this third item, 100 million Americans' data would be, over 100 million Americans would have their data stolen. So this is the Equifax story. Is everybody terrified? All right. All right, so show of hands, how many of you know somebody that's had their identity stolen? Show of hands, or have had your identity stolen? Maybe you live in fear of this happening. Okay, so we're all in here, guys. So let's talk about Equifax. Some of you may know what Equifax is. Equifax is one of the 3 big credit monitoring agencies here in the US. What you may not realize is that for hackers, Equifax quite possibly represents the holy grail of cybersecurity breaches. It's because of the data that they have. So over the course of 76 days in 2017, hackers managed to gain access to social security numbers, birthdays, home addresses, all the information you don't want them to have for 143 million Americans. Population's only 300 million. For 200,000 of these 143 million, credit card numbers also went out the door. Now, this is particularly scary because now hackers have just about 9 out of 10 things that they need to steal your identity, all right? So let's dig in. How does this happen? So this particular hack, we're gonna make cybersecurity fun, all right? This particular hack was centered around Equifax's website, all right? Like I said, in 2017, hackers managed to gain access to a small data center, and it was because of a vulnerability called the Apache Struts vulnerability. You guys will know forms. When you go to a website, you fill out a form, you put your name and email address in. Now you're getting emails left and right about buying services for a company. Right, that's a form. So the Apache Struts vulnerability affected forms on the Equifax website. And what hackers figured out a way to do was absolutely genius. They figured out a way to attach an error message, or attach malicious code to the error message that would trigger because of this bug. Error message gets read by the server. Error message is attached to the malicious code. So now the server's reading the malicious code. The malicious code says, open up the door, we're friendly. Next thing you know, Next thing you know, they're in the data center. They run a few more commands. They understand a little bit more about the architecture of the database, or of the network, and where the database storing your personal information is. Now, they run a few fairly benign commands. Next thing you know, your data's gone. Japan, Vladivostok, Alabama. So let's review the timeline of events here, because this is important. March, Equifax is notified of the breach. May, the breach starts. July 31st, imagine a systems administrator who's 23 years old. Kid sits down at the PC and he says, you know what, let's just run a few commands just to make sure we're good. We've had some vulnerabilities that are open for the past couple months. And he sits down and, oh my God. It took them a month to figure out how much data they had lost. Before that, he called his supervisor over. His supervisor comes over, and he says, well, how much data did we lose? He says, I don't know. All right, well, we've lost. We got to shut that server down. We got to call the FBI. And that's scary. So, all right, now that I've doom and gloomed everybody, let's talk about the number one question that I get. How do we prevent these things? All right, so I'm going to give you 3 things. All right? And if you bring me back up on stage later, I'll give you maybe some more. All right. First, we're going to run antivirus software, and we're going to update it regularly. Second, we're going to use multi-factor authentication. All right? Third thing, and I know I'm talking to some of you, don't you use the same password for everything. Guilty. All right, so I'm going to land on that point. The threat to our critical infrastructure is real. All right? Hackers will use any advantage they can, take any advantage they possibly can to exploit the gaps in security, in cybersecurity they're created when we do not follow the rules. So together, we're going to follow these 3